All right, so we're going to talk about change orders. And change orders, my description of it is money on the table. So when it comes to change orders, wanted to give you a little bit of history about this presentation and about why this is a hot topic that we wanted to share with you. So first of all, who is Syscon? For those of you who might not be familiar with us, we have been around for 32 years serving the computer needs, IT needs, specialty subcontractors, all of that time. And just a quick interesting story on that. We had, my father-in-law was a mason contractor, and he was very active in his business, attended all of the regular events for his industry, did some teaching, was very active with other owners. And back in the mid-'80s, he and some of his peers knew that computers were about to rock their world. And they also knew that they'd be able to get their bids and their alternates out a whole lot faster if they could use the computers. So several of them bought what was at the time very expensive computers to put in their office, and they kind of moaned that they were more like expensive paperweights, but they knew that those things were going to be a big deal in the coming years. So one of my father-in-law, his name was Al Wendt, one of his peers called our office and said, "So your dad tells me you guys are a computer." "Yes, sir, we are." "Well, mine's broken, come fix it." And he hung up the phone. So we kind of looked at each other and said, well, I guess we're in the computer consulting business. Let's go help him with his computer. And that kind of started that. So that's who we are. That's how we got started. And it's why we really have a heart for this, for the subcontractors. It was masons, then drywall, then HVAC, then iron workers, and the list goes on and on. Cement, you name it, we've helped those subcontractors. You know, it's interesting. Back in about 22 years or so, we had another mason who was interested in using construction-specific software, and he found this product, which at the time was called Master Builder, and he asked if we would take a look at it and see if we could help him with it. That contractor is still in business today and still uses that software, which is now called Sage 100 Contractor. And again, it was industry changing at the time and really made a huge difference in how he ran his business and what kind of information was available. So my background, my name is Catherine Wendt. We have been in business 32 years. I'm one of the co-founders of the company. We have done a variety of things for our contractor friends. I've stepped in as an outside controller for a large mason who was in a transition for a couple of years. We run union payrolls for some of our clients. We create union reports, run quarterly and annual payroll reports. For some clients, we do their bank reconciliations as kind of that outside party double check for the owner who'd rather not do his own bank recs. So we do a variety of things for that, and we have been helping our contractors with workflow, software, computers, hosting for all of these years as things have changed. For today, I'm going to share with you this, obviously the slide deck, but I have two tools. I have a basic Excel document that any one of you could use, and I'm going to walk you through that. And then I have chosen Sage 100 Contractor as an example of construction-specific software and some of the additional features that that can help you with. I'd also mention that we do a regular short 2-minute or less weekly video update on IT-related topics, the latest scams, books for our industry, other things that are coming up with like end of life for Windows 7 machines, things like that, to kind of keep you in the loop about computers and what you might need to do to keep them up and running in your office. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to share with you things that we've learned about subcontract change orders, some types of change orders and pricing considerations, contract considerations, tools for your field and your office, and tracking and managing change orders. So there are a couple of things we've learned about you, the subcontractor. First of all, the biggest source of lost revenue is work you performed but not collected on when it comes to change orders. Huge loss for you guys. If change orders are being tracked, we've also learned that oftentimes the budget part of the changes are not being tracked. One of the biggest opportunities to make margin or make up margin if the job is not going as planned is in your change orders if you do a good job managing them. And you're going to probably send a bunch of change order requests at the end of the job, things you've been holding on to, and you're going to get requests for closeout documents, and all of a sudden you're going to realize you better get all those change orders over, and you're going to send a whole bunch at the end of the job. So here are a couple of things that our general contractor friends know about you as well. They know that you aren't very good at tracking your change orders. Now, some of you, I'm sure, are awesome, but in general, for our industry, subcontractors are not well known for tracking their change orders, and this is money in their pocket if you are not on top of them. So that means they're not going to ask you for these unless it's a deduct. And I got a news flash. This is not their fault. You cannot blame them that they didn't come to you and ask you for your change orders. That's on you. So since you did the work and it's already completed, they also know that they can negotiate with you, because many times you'll settle for something rather than nothing, and they know that they can talk you down on your change orders. They also know that you are going to send the rest of the change orders when they ask for the closeout docs. So they know at that time they're going to get an onslaught from you, and they're going to begin that negotiation process. So those are a couple things the general contractors know. So let's just change the topic here a little bit, and let's talk about some types of change orders. So there's T&M work. Obviously, you go out, they come over to you, they ask you to do X, Y, and Z, or the project manager comes to your foreman and says, I'd like you to do this or that, or change something about what they want done, or they want to borrow your labor for some other work elsewhere on the site. So T&M work. Another type would obviously be necessary scope changes. So it turns out that we're going to need the garbage enclosure another 2 feet taller, or a doorway is not working as planned and we need a scope change. Of course, there's requests for possible scope changes, so perhaps an upgrade of the brick or tile or something else that they would like to look at possibly adding, but it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion that they're going to do it. So how about change order pricing? So one of the common ones is cost plus. So you're going to show your cost plus some agreed markup for overhead and profit. Another would be an agreed hourly rate by trade or class. So they may say up front, in this contract, we're going to have X dollars per hour for your labor and X dollars per hour for your journeyman. And those are the rates that you predetermine are going to be charged for any change orders. There could be a proposal that the estimator put together, and of course that pricing would be in there. There also might be some retention rules. So perhaps the change order is exempt from retention, or it has to go back to 10% retention even if the job is maybe down to 5%. So those are some other things about pricing your change orders. If you've got additional retention being held, you might consider that when you consider your markup. Okay, so what about cost plus, which is usually plus the overhead and or profit? So a couple things to consider when you're putting the cost portion together. One of the places I see a lot of misses is what's the total labor cost. Often I'll hear, well, it's about X dollars, and then that's the number that they're going to throw out. But they really haven't compared it to actual costs, fully burdened, all in. So not only the pay rate, the wage, but any taxes that you are going to pay on top of that, all insurance that you're going to pay, all benefits that you're going to be paying that employee. So what about your total material cost? This is another good one. So what about the taxes you paid your vendor? Maybe you thought you were going to get it from a vendor that's at 8 1/4, and it turns out that the job site was, there was a place a lot closer, and the foreman stopped and he picked it up, and the tax rate there was 9 1/2. Do you know that? Did you add that into your material cost before you marked it up? What about, for those of you in the Chicago area, and I'll bet there's similar issues in other states like Massachusetts and others, what about a local use tax that's required for doing work in a specific city? Did you include that in your material costs? Of course, freight, surcharges, those came into vogue back in 2008 when everyone started putting surcharges on their material invoices. Handling fees, I love those. So it just says handling fees, you don't even know what it is. But is that part of your material cost before you're doing your cost plus calculations? What about your equipment cost? So for rentals, Are you sure that your costs include everything through the day it was picked up? What about Chicago equipment tax? That's another good one. Cartage, operator fees that you might have been charged. If it's owned equipment, so you own it, you didn't rent it, consider what the cost might have been per hour had you rented it, and make sure you're getting that cost on your change orders. Consider whether there's oil, gas, or blades that you would need to run that piece of equipment, and make sure that's in your total operating cost. Now let's talk about that overhead and profit being calculated. So some contracts will call for 10 and 5, so 10% overhead, 5% profit, or 5% overhead, 5% profit. If you've got 10 and 5, don't just tack on 15%, that's a different number. You want to do a little math, take out your calculator or take out your pencil and your yellow pad, take any cost, times it by 10% overhead, then take that number times your 5% profit. That will be different than taking the original number times 15%. So make sure you know what the rules are in your contract. If you have the opportunity for 10 and 5 or 5 and 5, make sure you're doing the math correctly. All right, so what about this idea of an agreed hourly rate by trade or classification? So one of the big deals here is having an allowance for union increases. So if you're bidding the work, even now in the fall, and perhaps it can't start to the spring, if that work goes into May or June, depending on when your union rate increases come through, make sure that you have some factor in there for that increase, so that when the change order work is done, if it's after the increase, you're able to charge at the higher rate. I've seen contracts where that wasn't included, and it turns out that the start of the job was delayed, or the work took longer, or there was extensive change order work, so the original scope of work only took exactly what was expected, but the job was elongated because there were so many change orders. Now there's been a union change, there's been increases in wages and benefits, and there's no way to go back and renegotiate that hourly rate. If you have an agreed hourly rate, make sure that you have done the math on your side to take into consideration all taxes. So you've got the employer matching FICA and Medicare, you've got your federal unemployment, your state unemployment, and remember, every January, the state will put out the new rate and the new wage base. So the rate might stay the same, but the wage base might be higher, or vice versa, or maybe they're both changed. When you put your hourly rate together, include the full FUTA, federal unemployment, and state unemployment. You don't know when that's going to come in during the year, and you don't know if you're going to have to hire additional people onto staff. And remember, these all have maximums, but you don't know when during the year those people are going to hit the maximum. So make sure you include those dollar amounts when you're putting together your agreed hourly rate. All right, now you need to consider the insurance. Everyone's familiar with workers' comp. You have comp codes for the different trades that you have out there and the people who are on the field, out in the field. You might have a supervisor code, 5606. You might have your actual journeyman code, a laborer code. Those rates are charged to you as a rate per $100 paid. So make sure you have that worked into your agreed hourly rate by trade, by classification. General liability is another dollar amount, which is usually a percent that you have put together based on your estimated total payroll for the year. If you don't know what these are, get back with your insurance guy or gal and make sure that they can get you this information, and it's included in your agreed hourly rate. And then, of course, union benefits. The other place I see a miss every now and again is some unions have one or more benefit calcs that are subject to not just the fact that someone worked an hour, but on the hours paid. So if it's an overtime hour, it's that benefit times 1.5. Or if it's a double time hour, it's that benefit times 2. Make sure you have that figured out in your math for your agreed hourly rate. If you're not sure what those are all about, we can absolutely give you a call or contact your union and find out if any of these are for the benefit calculations. Take a look at your rate sheet from last update. Okay, so now let's talk about some tools to take care of your field. So remember, your field guys are out there trying to get the work done. They're being interrupted about change orders, or you're giving them a call and saying, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. I just got a call and we've got to make a change. So some of the tools that I've seen in the field are in the foreman's truck. Perhaps there's a booklet to fill out a form for any ticket work that's being done. Maybe even a carbonless one where they can fill it out, they can hand a copy, or they can bring a copy into the office and keep a copy in their truck. Sometimes these booklets actually have unique numbering where they start with number 6000, 6001, 2, 3, and each form has a unique number. It makes it easier for tracking. So that's one of the tools I've seen. Timesheets are another place where you can put in any ticket work that someone did, and you can even have a place on there for the local PM or whoever's representing the GC or the owner to at least initial that they acknowledge the work was done. That doesn't guarantee that you're going to get paid, but at least you have something where it was signed off. I've also seen some purchase orders where in the truck or in the field, they've got a purchase order book or some blank pages, something that they can keep track of, where they can track the material that's being used. I've also seen those on timesheets. It's a little harder to process, but you can track it on the timesheet. So what material did they use? They might not have gone down to the local store and bought things, but they took them out of their truck or out of other supplies. You want to make sure that those are going to get on your tickets. Any equipment that was used, whether or not they had to rent additional equipment, did we have to use a saw? Do we have other equipment out there, a cherry picker or something that we needed to use, some additional scaffolding? Do we have to take something from one part of the construction job over to another in order to do this ticket work? I've seen people use cell phones to take pictures of the paperwork. The office is not a fan of this, by the way. They're often hard to read, rather small, but it's certainly better than not having any copy of it at all. If you're lucky enough to have a job site trailer, sometimes there's a fax or a scanner over there, and you can get those over to the office. They'll let you go in there. And of course, mobile devices to collect time. There are new field time collection apps, and many of them will allow you to not only collect time, but indicate what work was done or a special cost code, and sometimes even indicate what equipment was in use or what materials were used for that ticket work. So here's the interesting part. Where is all this stuff? Where are all these tools that the field tends to use? So we all know that if we go out to our foreman's truck, the dashboard is going to be filled with these papers and last week's timesheets and anything else they've been filled out. Sometimes they're in a pile at the shop. Office doesn't know that yet, but they're back in the shop. Sometimes they're on the bookkeeper's desk waiting for a project manager to sign off or the owner to take a look or someone else to process or maybe give us pricing on what those materials should be billed for, things like that. Sometimes there's spreadsheets by job, which is great because other people have access to them. Someone needs to be responsible to fill them in, but that's another place to track some of this information. Sometimes it's on the server, and that might be in the cloud, or it might be remote access to the server that's at the office. Okay, so what about some tools to take care of the office? So from the clerical perspective, at a minimum, change orders, ticket work should be tracked in Excel at a minimum. If you're not comfortable with Excel, you don't know it very well, go to the library, take a class, get some information, check out some online videos. Another tool would be a computer file structure by job. So if you have a server or a shared, maybe a peer-to-peer environment, having a file folder by job, and in there might be PDFs of the tickets or a scan of the ticket or that document in Excel where you're tracking them. Better yet, invest in some construction-specific software so that you've got some other tools, reports, and tracking that would be available to make sure that these are processed, approved, and included in future bills. You might have PDFs or scans of the signed tickets. Again, if you can put them in some kind of file structure, they're easier to find. Another tool would be to tie out change order approvals with the contract value. So the office may get an approved change order, and 9 times out of 10, the GC or the owner has on the right-hand side the original contract, total previously approved change orders, the new contract amount, this approval amount and the brand new contract amount. Make sure that when you update your stuff that new contract value ties out. You might be missing a change order, or they may have not approved something that you thought had been done. A file folder for each job can be helpful. So if you don't have the electronic version, or you like to be able to have the file folders out for your PMs, having a folder for each job can be helpful. And definitely have a copy of the contract and know where those change order rules are. You might even put a little flag or a little post-it note or something on that page so they're easy to find. So what about from the foreman or the project manager's perspective? What we want them to do is we would like them to get that info turned in and to be sure that it's legible. So we know how many hours that actually is. We know what was included in the quantities. Getting signature and dates, very important. The better documented we are, the better we can make our argument to get paid and that we are entitled to it. Be sure that the foreman or the project manager lists all the materials and any equipment that was out there. Consider maybe some training for your foreman or a project manager to look up change orders, whether you have them in an Excel document or a file on your server. Give them access, show them how to look that stuff up. Training or access to the software reports. So how about a list of change orders by job? So we're going to keep it simple. What I'm going to do is bring up an Excel document for you. This is just a very basic Excel document. Didn't take me very long to make. And if I like the layout, I would obviously be able to do a save as and create one for a new job, clean it up, and not have to recreate it all over again. So in this example, we're called the best construction company ever. We've got a list of what the job is, the contract date, when progress bills are due, and the original contract amount. I've also included a status legend here, where rather than typing the words over and over again, if it's status 1, it's approved, 2 open, 3 disputed, 4 rejected. Nice way to track and sort your information. Got some potential change order numbers here on the side. And as we create change orders for ticket work or a scope change or something our estimator has put together, we can track the status, track a brief description so we know what work we're talking about, the date of the change order or the ticket work, ultimately the amount that we're going to bill for material, labor, any equipment, any other things like a permit fee or a roll-off container we might have needed, or some other odds and ends that came up that we want to be sure that we bill for. And this is just a totals column that totals all of those things together. On the flip side, and you might remember at the beginning of our discussion today, or my presentation to you, I had mentioned that for those of you who are tracking the billing part of the change order component, how about the cost side of it? So what are the costs that we incurred? So what do those materials cost us that we put in there? Either because they went down the street and bought them, or because we know what that cost is to replenish our stock and get some things out to the job site or onto the truck. Labor. This would be our fully burdened labor cost, but it's still our cost. All taxes in, all benefits in. Our cost for the equipment. Our cost for anything else that might have come up, like electrical hookup, or as I mentioned before, a permit. And what are those grand total costs? And then over here, I just have a very simple calculation that says if this is how much we bill and this is how much we spent, this would be our gross profit on this change order. Very helpful to know, helpful to consider when we're negotiating. If we really can't get any tighter than this, we would negotiate harder for this $241 than we would, maybe we'd have a little wiggle room on this second one where we're at 22% gross profit, and if they wanted to push us a little bit, maybe we could come down to 20 and we're still in pretty good shape. In this one, the status has been approved. This is change order number 2. We're adding a garbage enclosure, and we've got some material, labor. We do need some equipment, and we do have some other expenses. Got our grand total, and then we put together what we believe our expenses will be for our labor, material, equipment, and other things. And if we can stay within budget, if we can spend this amount, we'll make 22.05% profit on this change order. Simple to track, quick visual. You can actually color coordinate these, all of these here. I've just got the headers being coordinated so that you can think about, I did green for the billing amount because, money's green, and then the costs. Very simple tracking. A couple of important things about tracking the costs, not just the billing. When you're looking at whether you're going to make your budget, percent complete, things like that, if you do not consider your additional expenses to do the change order work, you're going to go over budget, guaranteed, because you're going to spend more money and more labor because you do have ticket work. So now when you're looking at your percent complete, you're looking at your budget to actual, it'll look like you went over, like your field did not do the work within the time that you had estimated, and that won't be true. So you need to be sure that the budget has the potential to be increased or decreased if it's a deduct by the amount of materials, labor, and other items, as well as the contract being increased or decreased, so that your budget accurately reflects what your new amount that you can spend is, and you can stay on track with that. If you do over under billing or work in progress reports, this is critical to get that data correct. Otherwise, you will be at 100% of your budget used and not 100% complete, and that will impact your work in progress reports. So this is just a very simple spreadsheet that you can put together yourself. If you like the format, just use over and over again. You can put this in job-specific folders or something similar. Okay, so that's a very simple one there. Another option would be to go ahead and do something with some construction-specific software. So what would be the advantage there? So what I'm doing, as I mentioned, is I'm using Sage 100 Contractor, formerly Master Builder, and what I'm going to do is go down to the Project Management module, and I'm going to go ahead and look at my change orders. There's a whole module here where I can create my change orders, I can print them out, whether I get them signed or not, I can email them, attach them. Subcontractor changes, I can get a list of my change orders, and I can track them in a couple different ways. So we're going to go down and look at a list of change orders on a particular job. So on the left, I can look at it with details, with notes and details. I can put them in alphabetical order, lots of choices here. I'm going to look at it with details and notes. And we're going to look at a particular job that I've already kind of got set up and ready for discussion. Job number 606, it's a restaurant here. And I'm just going to bring this up to the screen for you. We're going to talk about, within seconds, I have this report available and what it's telling me and what some of the benefits are of having a report, an on-demand report like this. So here's my job, and I've got a couple different change orders here. The first one, change order number 1, is dated September, and it was for a new reinforced 8-inch CMU on the west elevation. I've got some details about my notes and what I included in there, and some additional details about the foam in place and such, the requested amount, and ultimately the approved amount, and this is status approved. And I can kind of go down this list and see a number of different things here. We actually even have the change order number, approval number from the GC that we can track here. We have winter conditions, foreman hours, bricklayer hours, all kinds of things here. And ultimately at the end of the report, I can get some grand totals. So we have 107,000 plus in requests, and 106 has been approved so far. If that seems a little overwhelming to you, we can also do it in a very simple, straightforward one page here where everything is very nicely laid out. And with a quick glance, I can see that there's one open change order. I can actually drill down to it, take a look. I can see who created it, on what date. I can see if there are any budget things. Budget's missing on this one. And I can see some information here, any notes that we have, that it's a status open. Very quick, very easy to take a look and track. I can actually even say I only want to see the status open change orders. I can hand this to someone and say, please call and find out the status on our open change orders. Very simple. Also in construction specific software, another advantage is I can go straight to the job. And on that screen, I can look at a lot of information here. I can look at the total contract, our original contract, all approved changes, our new contract, how much we've invoiced so far. And according to this, we've invoiced for a change order that's not yet approved. So we need to get that fixed. I can also from here get a list of change orders, see all of that same information without having to go run a special report, and I can drill down to any one of these I need to look at. So very handy, very quick, very well organized, and available to anyone in the office. And frankly, it can also be made available to project managers or anyone else who can be given access to it, and you can limit what parts of the program that those project managers or foremen can have access to. So that would be an example of construction-specific software. All right, so let me move on to another thought for you here, some other things for you to consider. Tell your foreman what you expect when it comes to change orders. One of the biggest things I hear when I'm in an office is the owner or maybe the GM in the office on the phone with the foreman saying, well, I thought you would have this and I thought you would have that. Make sure that you know what you expect from them. Is it that booklet and they're supposed to bring one of the copies back? Make sure that they know that. What are you asking them to do when it comes to change orders? Do you want the materials listed on that booklet form, or do you want it on the time that they're turning in? Tell them what you expect. Make sure that they know. As an office person, I would also ask you to consider giving the office permission to follow up with the field. And when they do, have their back. Have the back of the office people and expect the field to cooperate. Now look, we know your guys are on the wall. They're trying to get the job done. There's a lot going on. No reason for us to bother them 20 times or unnecessarily. But if we're being thoughtful and we need this stuff in order to get the change orders out in a timely fashion, let them know to cooperate with the office. And when the office comes back to you and says, look, I just can't get this stuff and I need to get the change order out, have their back. Remember, this is your money. Most of you on the call are either an owner or have a significant investment in the company. This is your money. Have a written summary of what should be done and by whom, so there's no question. I'd also like to encourage you to get into your own software, check out your own spreadsheets. Go take a look at what's out there. Know what's happening on your jobs. Perhaps you do it once a week. You don't want to get on the computer? No problem. Sit down with whoever's at your office, have them pull them up for you. Have them print them out and have on your desk by 7 a.m. every Friday. Take a look and see what's out there. Inspect what you expect. If you expect these tickets to come in with the time, the job number, the date the work was done, a signature by the local project manager, what materials were on there, go do some spot checking and make sure the stuff that's being turned in the office has those things on there. And if they don't, get on the phone with your foreman and tell them what you need, and then go back and check it again. Why should you have to do that when you already told them? Because you're the boss and it's your money. Inspect what you expect. Here's another really good one. Have backups of your electronic documents. Whether you've got construction-specific software, Excel spreadsheets, a file folder with PDFs in it, have a backup. Things happen. Things get corrupt. There are viruses out there. Your data could be corrupted accidentally by something that was downloaded onto your computer by accident. Someone clicked on a link that they shouldn't have clicked on. And by the way, Gmail is not a backup. Gmail, Yahoo, those things, you think, well, it's Gmail, it's Yahoo, they've got backups. The only thing that they'll guarantee you is that they can put back up what it was before it went down. They can't go back and find the document you deleted 2 months ago, or the closeout papers that someone sent you 2 months ago that you can't find. If it's not there, it's been deleted, that is not a backup. You're not going to get it off your Gmail account. You might also consider some electronic time or document collection software. Many of these things now can be done through their cell phones. They don't even necessarily need a tablet. Tablets are a little easier to look at, but they may not even need a tablet. There are amazing things being done with the cell phone apps now. If you're curious on what that kind of thing is offered right now, we do a demo every month of our field integrated time system, It is an app that sits on the phone and has a back office connection that we happen to have connected with Sage 100 Contractor, but it would at least open your eyes for the kinds of tools that are out there for collecting time and other information from the field. Check it out. It might be something for the future. While I have your attention, I want to make a final word about security. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a game. I cannot tell you the horrific stories that we see over at Syscon week in and week out, and some of the heartbreak that we've watched some of our clients go through. Small businesses are a huge target for hackers right now. One of the things that hackers know is that passwords are often not what they should be. Make sure and enforce that you have strong passwords. Don't know what that means? Look it up. We've got stuff in our articles. Do a search on our website and find my article on this. Strong passwords, minimum 8 characters, upper and lower case, letters, numbers, strong passwords. Frequently change them. And I know no one likes changing their password. I don't like changing the password. Every time my notice comes up that I'm going to have to change my password, I cringe. Just stop complaining. This is the world we live in. Change your password. Please don't share them. Often I'll go to an office and everyone has the owner's password so that they can log into everything. Don't share your passwords. Don't use pet names. Don't use birthdays. All that stuff is out on your Facebook account. Anyone can scrape that information off of your accounts. Banking. Do your own bank statement. And if you just cannot stomach that and deal with it, go to someone else who can do it for you. Hire someone like us, your CPA, somebody else. Do the bank statement, especially if someone else in your office has the right to sign checks. At a minimum, log onto your bank site and take a look at what's going in and out of your checking account. Never, never give a username and password, phone or email. Never share that. Someone calls you and they want your username and password. Someone sends you an email and says they're from Microsoft, says they're from American Express, says they're from your bank, and you just put in your username and password to do something. Never do it. You don't know where those came from and you don't know where those links go. And if you get a phone call, if you get an email with a phone number, dial this 800 number, dial this phone number, don't call it. If you think that's your bank, if you think that's UPS, go pull the number up out of your vendor information or off the website for that vendor. Don't take it out of the email. You never know where those go, and there are all kinds of scams like this. So I'll summarize and then I'll open it up for any questions or thoughts you might have. Change orders aren't going away, of course, so make a plan to track and follow up on them. Your field guys need appropriate tools to track the change orders. I give you some ideas. You may have some other ones that you're using. Make sure that they have what they need. You and your office need a system that is followed by everyone. And by the way, that means you too. Follow the system, follow the rules, so everyone knows what to expect. I'd ask you to encourage the foreman and your project managers to follow the plan that you've laid out. Inspect what you expect from them. And then technology tools are a good investment and they will absolutely pay off. If you could collect your change orders earlier in the process, that helps your cash flow. If you could collect on 25% more of your change orders than you're collecting on now, that is cash in your pocket. You already did the work. These technology tools are worth the investment and they will pay off. So I'd like to thank all of you for your time and attention during the webinar. Hopefully this sparked some additional thoughts, some ideas, some other things that you might want to consider looking into, or going back to your field, going back to your office, making sure that you know what they're doing. Are they using the tools you think? Do they need some things?